Hey, Allison Verhalen here with AV Writing Services, and today I am talking about bounce rate. What makes for a good bounce rate? What is a bounce rate? How can you lower your bounce rate? We're going to be talking about all of that, so let's get right into it. So first of all, there's what a bounce rate actually is, and then there's what Google Analytics measures, and they're a little bit different. So a bounce rate is actually a single interaction website visit. What Google Analytics measures is a single page website visit, which can be a little confusing because what it measures isn't always 100% accurate. Now, a single interaction website is a little bit different from a single page visit because there are lots of different kinds of interactions, right? There's an e-commerce item versus an e-commerce transaction. There are social media interactions. There are user-defined interactions. There are all these different kinds of interactions that don't really play into website views. So Google Analytics measures website views, but again, that can be a little confusing because let's say you have a pop-up that comes up on your website, whether it's asking someone to subscribe to your newsletter or it's a chatbot that shows up in the corner right there. All of those things can be recorded in Google Analytics as a second page view. So even if someone doesn't interact with your chatbot, they don't click on another page, they don't do anything else, they just go to your website and look through the content and leave again, that's a bounce rate. That's a bounce. They came, they saw one thing, they left. But because you had that little pop-up, whether it was here or over here or wherever, Google defines that as another interaction, another page view. And so that can actually lower your bounce rate artificially because, again, they did bounce, they left. They only came, they saw one thing and they left, but some things make it a little bit wonky. So be careful if you have a really, really low bounce rate, like less than 10%, that might look really good, but in that case, if it's too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. So look a little deeper into that and see if you have something that's causing it to be artificially low. Again, with things like videos or cookies that cause sessions to reset, they can make it look like someone clicked on another page of your website when really it just reset the session, even though the user didn't do anything. And that again can cause your bounce rate to be artificially low. So you really don't want your bounce rate to be too high, but you don't want it to be too low either. And the reason for all this is obviously because you want people to stick around to your website. You want them to engage with your content, to click on whatever link it is you want them to click on to take the next step in the buyer journey, whether that's going to a sales page or filling out a contact form or whatever it might be. You want them to take the next step in the buyer journey. You don't want them to just come to your site and click away. Now, that being said, it's gonna happen. People are gonna come to your site and they're gonna click away without doing anything else. Don't freak out over it. Don't think that you need to convert every single person who comes to your website. Not every website viewer is your ideal customer. And in the overall average bounce rate throughout the internet is around 61%. So, and that sounds really high. That sounds like more than half of the people who come to your website are leaving without doing anything. Don't freak out. That's totally normal. So first of all, calm down, take a breath. There are different bounce rates for different categories. For example, industry. If you're in, for example, the food and beverage industry, the bounce rate tends to be much lower, like 55%. If you're in like the marketing industry, which is the highest that I looked at, it had a bounce rate of like 68% and everything else fell in between there. So again, you're still coming up with an average of like 60 to 65% bounce rate, regardless of the industry that you're in. So don't freak out. Maybe take a look at your industry. If your bounce rate is higher than the overall average, and or if it's higher than the average for your industry, then maybe you have some issues you need to work through, and we'll get to that a little bit later in the video. So then there is a bounce rate by source. So how are people finding your website? Are they coming to you through social media? Are they coming to you through a referral from another website? Are they putting in a search term and your website popped up and they clicked on your ad or maybe your organic search when you showed up organically below the ads, maybe they clicked on that link for your website. Know how people are coming to your website and know the bounce rate of that traffic. So for example, social media is going to have a high bounce rate because that's the nature of social media. Maybe they clicked on a link to your blog post and read through the blog and they left. That's totally normal for social media. SEO, when you show up organically in a search and people find you and they're actively looking for something and they click on your website, that has the lowest bounce rate. But again, that's still like 50 to 55% bounce rate. It's still pretty high. So again, don't freak out if half or more than half of people who come to your website are leaving, because even when they're actively looking for something, they still might not decide to read more on your blog or elsewhere on your website or take the next step in the buyer journey. That's okay. Just let them go and focus on getting in those people who really do want your services or products. So, and then there's paid search. So this is when you're paying to show up at the top of the first page of Google for certain keywords. And that actually has a fairly high bounce rate of like 60 to 65%, depending on your keywords. So that is a problem because you are paying for those clicks. When you show up organically in those searches, that's not free, because at the very least you put in time, if not paying an SEO strategist to make sure you show up in those searches. At the very least you put in your time, and your time is absolutely worth something. So I'm not going to say that SEO is free, that search ranking, but that ad space is for sure, you're paying for each and every click, and to not convert most of those clicks is pretty painful. So if that is happening, that is a problem, and that is something you're going to want to look at. And again, we'll get to that a little bit later, but really look at your keywords in that case. What keywords are you targeting in your ads? Are they keywords with a lot of buyer intent, or are they keywords where someone is lower in the buyer journey, earlier in the buyer journey, and so they're not quite ready to buy yet, and maybe that's why they're clicking away? So that is a problem. So look at that and make sure you're getting a return on the investment that you're paying for those ads, because depending on the keywords you're trying to rank for, that might not be cheap at all. So take a look at that, and if you have a high bounce rate and you're still getting your money's worth, then don't worry about it. But there's almost always something you can do to get a little bit more of a return on your investment. So, and then bounce rate by keyword. So I talked about this a little bit last week in the different kinds of keywords. We've got a lot of different kinds, but to break it up into two major groups, we've got the short tail keywords and the long tail keywords. And maybe overgeneralizing a bit, but for the most part, the short tail keywords are the 1 to 2 word search terms, and those tend to have a very low search value, or very high bounce rate, because they're earlier in the buyer journey. So they're looking for how to do stuff. They're not necessarily looking to buy right now. They just need some information. They get what they need. They click away. That's fine. Don't be surprised if content that you tried to rank for those short tail keywords, if that has a high bounce rate. That's totally normal. The long tail keywords, part of the reason you want to try to rank for those long tail keywords is A, they're easier to rank for, and B, they tend to have a higher search intent. They are looking for something specific, and if they're not ready to buy yet, they're closer to being ready to buy. They're higher up in that buyer journey. So they're looking for something specific, and if you can provide them with what it is they're looking for, they're much more likely to buy from you. So in many cases, that long tail keyword is going to have a lower bounce rate. So again, focus on those long tail keywords, because those are gold in the world of SEO. Now, how can you lower your bounce rate? I just talked a whole lot about keywords, so that's got to be your number one. Make sure that make sure you know where your traffic is coming from, and when they're coming to you through organic search, know what search terms they're using to find you. Are they finding you through relevant keywords that you're actively targeting for? You have your list of keywords and search terms that you want to rank for. Are people actually finding you using those search terms, or are they using other search terms to find you? And maybe you're ranking for keywords that you weren't even trying to rank for. That can be a good thing, or it can be a bad thing. Again, look at those keywords and see, does this align with what you're offering, or is it something completely random? If it's completely random, then you're going to have a higher bounce rate because people aren't finding what they need when they get to you. You want to fulfill that promise. When they see that headline and they see the little blurb of what you're offering and they click on it, they chose you because they thought you could give them whatever it is they're looking for. So fulfill that promise. Make sure that your content is engaging and gives them what they need. So if you're ranking for random keywords that you don't want to rank for, that's a problem, and you need to adjust that and adjust the words and phrases that you're using in your content. If they're great keywords that are relevant, then maybe add them to your keyword list and try to rank for them more. Put them in more content because that's working for you. You're showing up in those searches and it's getting traffic to your website. So that is something you want to capitalize on. So always, always, always look at your keywords, see what's working, what's not working. And your load speed. That's tip number 2 is work on your website load speed. That is how long it takes to load. When someone clicks on your website, how long does it take before they actually see your full website, all of your content and your images and your text and a video if you have a video? How long does it take to load? If it takes more than 2 or 3 seconds, people are going to click away. And I know that's super short, but that's what it takes because we live in a world of instant gratification, especially online. If they can't access your website right away, if they don't see what they need right away, if they're just sitting there twiddling their thumbs waiting for it to load, they're going to click away because they can get to another website that will load right away and show them exactly what they need. So make sure that your website, your load speed is super fast. Several things that could be slowing down your website could be what your website host, your host server, where their servers are located, can be an issue. So talk to your website host server. It can also be images. Images and video are great for engaging with your audience, but they can also really slow down that load time. So it's a balancing act. Make sure you have enough images that are engaging, but not enough that you're slowing down your load speed. So try to figure out where that sweet spot is and stick to it. And that leads us into number 3. Make it engaging. Use images, use videos, but again, use them sparingly. And then make the content engaging. Use a story. Talk to your audience about their pain points. What is it that really interests them that's going to grab their attention and keep them reading and or watching the video or whatever it is all the way till the very end, all the way to that call to action. And again, like I said earlier, fulfill that promise. When they saw your headline, when they saw that little blurb below your headline, you were making a promise to them about what they would find when they came to your website. So fulfill that promise. Give them what they need and what they thought they were going to get when they clicked on that link. And then there's your call to action. So first of all, try relocating your call to action. Maybe it's in the wrong place. Maybe it's like way down at the bottom of the blog post. And if it's a really long blog post and people just want a little bit of content and they skip to whatever they need and then they go out, again, maybe try working the call to action in a little bit earlier in the blog post or in the sales page or whatever the content is. And work on the kind of call to action that you're using with certain pieces of content. So not only will the location make a big difference, and again, pop-ups make a difference as well. As far as location, I know we on the user end find them annoying. You get these pop-ups when you're trying to read something and suddenly you're getting asked for your email address or whatever. I think they're so annoying. I hate them, but they work. People use them for a reason. It is because they work. They get people's email addresses that way. They get more people signed up for their newsletter, and it works. So if you're not using a pop-up for your newsletter, consider using one because they're effective. People use them for a reason. So, but also you have to make sure that the call to action, if it's in the content, if it's somewhere in there, if it's kind of embedded in the content, make sure that it's relevant to the content. So asking someone to subscribe to your newsletter is super easy, and you can do that all the time. You can do that especially with those short tail keywords, with the blog posts where people are looking for information but they're not ready to buy yet. Once they've got that great information and they're like, wow, this person really knows what they're talking about, this company seems like a really great company, offer to put more information in front of them by getting them to sign up for your newsletter and or following you on social media, so you can continue putting that great content in front of them so that when they are ready to buy, your brand will be the first thing that they think of. On the other hand, if you're announcing a new product or service, again, your blog post should not be salesy, but there are a few times when you can get away with that. And when you're announcing something new is one of those few times when you can get away with that, is when you're describing how a new product or service works or how it can help your customers. Work with that and then direct them to a sales page and make sure that they're going to that sales page and taking the next call to action. So the next step in the buyer journey. So your call to action has to match the content. It has to match where your audience is in the buyer journey. Are they in the very early stages or are they in the later stages of the buyer journey? You have to know where they are so that you can match the call to action with where they are. And then we're still working our way through the list. Test, and retest. Test your keywords constantly. Test your call to action, the location, the pop-up. Maybe a pop-up doesn't work for you. Maybe your audience finds that super annoying and they never use the pop-up and they never give you your email address, in which case get rid of it. Never, ever take anything for granted. Just because an expert like me says that this works for most people does not necessarily mean that it will work for your website. So take that into account. Test everything. Use different kinds of content. A/B test. See what kinds of content get more traffic and more conversions, meaning a lower bounce rate. You have fewer people coming to your website and bouncing away back to Google or social media or whatever. So keep track of that, and then keep track of your own metrics. So like we said, Google Analytics measures single page views, and that can be single page view visits, and that can be a little problematic for a few different reasons, but make sure that you know where your audience is going and how many people are subscribing to your newsletter, are following you on social media, are clicking to your sales pages. Make sure you know what pages are getting the most views. Is it blog posts? You have a lot of traffic on your blog post. Make sure you know which blog posts are getting a lot of traffic. If your sales pages, if your about page or your services pages are getting a lot of traffic, you have to know that too, and know if people are taking the next step in the buyer journey. And again, if they're following you on social media, maybe they click to social media, to your profile on that social media page to follow you. Or if they subscribe to your newsletter, in our blog posts, we always have a little form embedded at the bottom of the blog post, and you can just put your email and your information right there. Subscribe to our newsletter. You don't have to go to another page. You can fill that out and click back to Google or social media or whatever it is. So Google Analytics would consider that a bounce because they did not look at another page, but we look at that as a success because we just got them to take the next step in the buyer journey by subscribing to our newsletter and asking for us to send more content to them, which of course we're going to do. So know your own metrics. Know what the next step in the buyer journey is. Know how many people are taking that next step versus how many people are bouncing away without doing anything else. And then get to know your audience and talk to them. Ask them what they want. Ask them what's working for them. If someone reaches out to you, ask them what prompted them to reach out to you. What was it about your website that made them take that final step to either reaching out to you or clicking the buy button or whatever it is that they finally did. Ask them about it. And especially when you get them on the phone or in person, if you meet them for coffee or something, take that opportunity to just say, hey, what made you reach out to us? And what prompted you to do this? And then you can have a survey on your website, a little form that people fill out that, again, just prompt them. Make it short, because if it's too long, they're not going to fill it out. But just a quick question, hey, what got you to come here? What got you to come here and take the next step in the buyer journey, whether it was signing up for your newsletter or clicking on another page or whatever it might be. So that's it. Those are our 7 tips for how to keep your bounce rate low. And everything about bounce rate, what it is, what's a good bounce rate, how to know if you're getting a good bounce rate, or how to know if you're in trouble. So that's it for us this week. Again, you can reach out to us. We are at avwritingservices.com if you have any other questions about bounce rate, call to action, keyword, SEO, content marketing, all that stuff, you can reach directly out to us. We are at info@avwritingservices.com, and that's it for us. Have a great week and happy marketing.